And so I said, let me have a look at your pitch deck. And he'd had a couple to drink and he just leaned into me and said, if you sleep with me, you can see my pitch deck.
Well, hello and welcome to Disrupt, another podcast for you lovely people. Today we're joined by a good friend of mine actually, and a wonderful lady in tech called Alexandra, I'll give you her full name, Alexandra Morris, who's CEO and founder of Let's Move UK. And Alex and I met when we did a high business growth network sessions, I guess they were, weren't they, for Man Met University. And it was great because there were so many different people from so many different backgrounds that we met. And it was all fast growth businesses, lots of learnings, lots of basic stuff. And we kind of bonded straight away, didn't we? I think we were actually probably the rebellious two of the group, I feel.
Yes.
We did like to heckle back at the speakers, which is also very good. And they invited us back again, so that's good. So, Alex, we always start these podcasts with understanding a little bit about your journey, because every journey is not linear, every journey is interesting and different. And it's important to establish, where you're going with that journey and what the lessons are you've learned. So what's been your journey into tech?
So I grew up in hospitality with my parents, who ran a number of pubs across the Northwest, and spent a lot of time flitting from pub to pub because that was the nature of that industry. But in doing so, I got my first education into business and what it means to run a business, right down to working behind a bar, to managing HR, to promotional marketing stuff, and then eventually finance. And so I suppose it was ingrained in me that was always going to be something that I would seek to do after I left. So by the time I was 18, I probably felt like I'd run companies for the last 5 years. So started early. And from there, I went into conveyancing actually, because property always interested me. Did a short stint as a conveyancing assistant, got to understand that process. Always had a bit of an interest in law, but never really pursued it. And then after the birth of my second child, I got speaking to a friend of my partner's at the time, and he was setting up a business in lettings basically, and he asked me if I would be interested in coming on board. We sat down, and the first online letting agency, which also did sales at the time, was launched, which is Make Your Move, in 2008, right at the height of chaos in business world. And I initially started out as a bit of an advisory role, but just got deeper and deeper into it and just loved it. And there became the first tech-driven process that I got involved with, because I was like, well, it's great, this online stuff, it's brilliant, but what are we really solving here? What are we actually doing? I mean, there's so many systems and processes out there for the high street agent, which are great, but they're not really for the end user. And us doing it online, we're getting all these softwares that we don't need all that access to, and we're paying all that money for when we only need a small portion of it. So we decided to build our first CRM and then technical platform for end users to use directly. So built the software for them rather than for agents. And that was a 2-year journey. And I don't even think then I was like, I'm in tech. It just didn't work out like that. And then over the past 15 years doing that, more and more things have come about, and the property industry is definitely an industry that needs technical development, innovation. Adoption is the biggest problem in the property industry. See all these great softwares and solutions, and we got to speak into some of our clients. So we've got over 30,000 clients across the UK, and asked them what their biggest pain points were, and it was always the same. The tax return. Am I making money? Media alienating them. So we were like, well, what if we could just take all those little tools and put them all into one thing, so that everyone could log in and see exactly what was happening with their portfolios at any time. So they could have a look at what the valuations were, what the movement was, what the P&L was, what the likely tax bill is going to be, what they should be saving for maintenance. And so Let's Move was born. And we've been developing that now for the last 14 months, I'd say. The idea of it came way earlier than that, but 14 months of hard development. And now I think I'm finally into tech. other than understanding a bit of PHP and a bit of code and stuff like that. Yeah, I now fully understand the whole life cycle of a technical solution, and I love it. So that's how I've ended up in tech.
Right, I'm gonna. That sounds a beautiful story, and you glossed over all of the good stuff, in my opinion. So I'm going to backtrack a little bit. So all I can see there is that you started in hospitality. You were dealing with people. You saw people problems literally from the get-go.
Yes.
And all of the iterations of your career have been people-led, by the sounds of it.
Yeah.
But you glossed over. Oh, I had my second child. You've got how many children?
3.
3 children, and how many dogs?
2.
2 dogs. And her husband also has been working and growing business in tech as well.
So yeah, he is more into it now, and he's a non-executive director on our businesses as well. But yeah, his background is in telecommunications, software solutions for the call center industry, if you like, and various other, as things have developed, AI tools, chatbots, that sort of stuff.
You literally don't sit still though, because you've been doing a house up, and then you decided to also do a law degree part-time.
Yes,
so
that was fun.
You're not for the faint-hearted, this, by the way. So whilst this sounds a beautiful glossy story, I just kind of got on this conveyor belt. You've been really working your tail off. So why do a law degree as well as doing all this exciting stuff with business?
So the law degree was... I spent years interacting with various people in the property industry. Some are lovely, some are fantastic, some you want to work with, some you wish the best for, and some you just think, why are you here? There's so negativity there. And there was lots of challenges around just being underestimated, which is not a problem for me, regularly get underestimated. And
we'll come back to that.
I know, I thought we might. There's other things like, I suppose, people... There was a stage of my life, I was about 27, I had 2 children, I'd been doing what I'd been doing for a number of years at that point, and I'd faced investors, and I'd faced other shareholders, and I'd been on the board, and that was all a new journey for me as well. And I just felt like I wasn't taken seriously, and I just thought, well, I just got it in my head. If I hadn't done this, and if the life hadn't taken me down the path that it did do, I would likely have gone to college, and I would likely have gone to university, and a law degree would have been what I'd done. So, people say, what if you didn't do it? And I decided to explore that what if and say, well, let's go and get a law degree and see if there's anything at the end of that says I was capable of getting a first. That was my first requirement. I had to get a first.
And so you got a first class honours degree in law. Brilliant.
And then did I then want to venture into that as a career, or was there anything in there? And the only thing that came out of it was, oh my God, law is so ready for technical innovation. that was what I got out of it. So,
the entrepreneur.
But I did absolutely love it. It's like the more I got into it as well, the more involved, and the more I realised that law was just brilliant. I just love it as a subject, and everybody should do it. Was it a challenge? Yes, it was. When I first started, I thought, well, if I give this up after a year, it's not the end of the world. And then after 4 years, I was like, you can't give this up now. And that's it. You've got to do it. And yeah, it was tough. It was very tough. And there were lots of ups and downs in that as well. I was like, oh my God, I only got 68% on that. I'm never getting my first now. Little cries, and then go back at it again. And yeah, there's stuff like that. And unsurprisingly, land, equity and trust was my star subject within that category and that's eventually what ended up getting me my first. So,
I can imagine. So going back to, you started to do law because you wanted to be taken seriously as well, and you kind of reflected on your past. Talk to me about that, because I still think we are judgmental with people who haven't taken a linear path.
Yes.
From an education to work route.
Yeah.
And even those people who do A-levels and go straight into work still feel, oh, but I didn't go to university because. And it's almost like they feel the need to justify and validate. Talk to me about that, because I'm hoping that you realised doing that degree, you were always taking seriously. Oh. It's all about attitude, but I want you to explain that. So what's the other drivers that were making you do it, and do you feel like doing it now has meant that you feel like you are validated, justified somehow?
So there's so many questions there, Hayley. I'm making it. It started out as proving something, and at the time I thought I was trying to prove something to other people, but actually I think I was just trying to prove something to myself. I am capable, just because I had children at a young age and all the rest of it, and I fell into an industry rather than chose to pursue that industry, that I was any less credible than anybody else in the room. And so that was definitely a starting point, but it's just moved on from there. I got a lot out of it, from a beneficial point of view for me in the business world. The way I interact with people, my confidence when it comes to dealing with things that are a little bit outside of my comfort zone now is much better. Research, being able to research stuff, which is really key when you're doing technical development and stuff. All of that, definitely skills, tick, 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 tick. So there was lots of benefits in there. The pursuit of it in the first place, though, was definitely one of, I felt like I wasn't taken seriously. The linear development into a career was an absolute driver in that as well, because if I'd come straight out of, if I'd gotten my first at the age of 21 and gone straight into this kind of a career, I would probably have had a leg up. I'd have probably been a little bit, it would have been easier to have those conversations with people in London. It would have been easier to have those conversations on the board, my voice get heard, things like that. So, yeah, and I don't think we take it seriously. And that's what's nice about tech as well. As a career option, tech is one of those that you can fall into, but there are elements of it. Obviously, you need to, know what you're doing before. And I wouldn't say a coder can just start tomorrow and then become a top class coder by the end of the year. So I suppose, taking women as well, I think is a big one too. If I didn't choose to have children when I did, it just happened when it did, and I'm absolutely love it. My son's entering the employed world right now, which is quite scary to think that I'm already that old. And but I look at his career path and his choices, and I think, I was the same when I was 17, 18. I didn't know what I wanted to do. It kind of fell on my lap. And I think college into university just doesn't work for everybody. And we have to recognise that doesn't mean they've not got the same skill sets. When they've built different kind of skills that you get in different kind of, just working behind a bar, like you said before, people-led interactions. You get to understand and read the behaviour of people, or the potential behaviour of people in certain emotional situations.
Yeah.
You get to understand, you get to see a lot of life stories playing out in front of you. Yeah.
Book.
It's like sitcoms. And we did used to laugh as well, and sometimes in the morning and just say, it's literally, where are the cameras? We're being watched all the time. So all of that, it's more skills that you're not going to develop, or you maybe won't develop as quickly if you're just going down college and then into university and all your peers are the same. So as a 15-year-old, I was interacting, and some of you may furrow your brows at this, but interacting with 40-odd-year-old divorced men at a bar, telling me about their lives and the stages that they'd gotten to. And as a 15-year-old, that was fascinating, because I was like, I thought everything was just so dreamy and perfect and straight lines, and no, it isn't. There's that is literally the up and down of everybody's life, isn't it? So.
It is. We recently had a disruptor day where we had a technology sort of bit of a showcase, and I had a panel of people, and the question I asked was about technology and how I don't like it in some respects because of the dehumanization of what it could mean for the future. And here's so the story is, and my feelings are, we absolutely need technology in every area of our life. We already, all of us, rely on it daily, almost hourly to function. And I love it from an education point of view. I love the fact that, I was with a consultant cardiologist at a course the other day, and she was saying how amazing it was for AI and VR to help her with experimenting on different things and learning different ways. And I think that, children in the classroom could learn to be good mechanics by in a VR headset. They could be brilliant. I love all of that. I love the fact they can interact and talk different languages with other people as an avatar. Great. What I don't like is the bit that you were talking about in the pub.
That across the bar.
Yeah. I'm fearful we're going to lose that skill.
Yeah.
of connecting, interacting. I already see it in a number of ways. Obviously we've got a lot more awareness about neurodiversity now. People find it very awkward, so technology helps them to communicate socially. But I still feel that we that human connection is being lost. And I think as tech entrepreneurs like yourself, do you feel a sense of responsibility to actually help encourage the human element around the use of technology?
Absolutely. I think we all have to. I think everyone needs to be, and there is maybe another conversation to have actually when you talk about technical solutions and development, and that is money driving it rather than solutions driving it. And that's money from investment into what you make out of it and profits. And if you just sort of remove all of that a little bit, and there are different elements of social inclusivity, then you've also got to think about general exclusivity. Are you inadvertently creating that situation? I think platform-led stuff, we talk about social media and the way that our children are so different to what we were like, but by the same token, going through the exact same things that we were going through, they're just much more observed than we were. Yeah. So we didn't have all of that to play out on social media as well. And so when we're developing tech, I suppose part of the development process is what does this address and how much of an interaction can this have? I love technology that sits in the background and is just there. It's useful. It's helpful when you need it, but it can still run. It can still, popping in to have a quick look at something because you're bored, that's fine. But popping in to have a quick look at something because you're bored and then being there 2 hours later, and we know what we're talking about here.
We know what we're talking about here.
Is scary because that's 2 hours 3 times a week, and you've got to think about the effect that has on individuals, like you were saying, both mentally, whether or not that it depletes their social skills, but also what mental impact that will have on them from a lonely point of view. It will make you quite lonely.
Well, loneliness is a big killer. Yeah. And statistically that's the case, and I truly believe that. So I feel we do have this kind of ethical constraint or ethical load that we have to carry, I feel.
And some of the scary stuff with tech as well is data, right? So I am a huge advocate for data being used in a good way. So there's so much data. Your data's out there, my data's out there. I'm more than happy to give my data to certain institutions, certain companies, because I like what they then do with that data and what they can then give back. So, from an analysis point of view, or taking data and combining it with other data and then showing you a different thing. But there is so much, it's too easy within data.
I think people don't realise what they're giving away, do they?
And also to create, when you're interpreting data as well, to create significant, like gender diversity in data, for example, if we look at how cars are developed, the safety of cars, and the statistics that are used and the data that's used to develop the safety metrics for the car is based on the male physique, the male body. So if you're a woman in a car accident, you're more likely to have severe injuries because the seatbelt placement and the location of the seat itself is been built based on gender data.
I didn't know that. That's scary.
But there's so much of it. There's so much
frightening, isn't
Think
it?
about mortgages, getting mortgages.
And do you think that is a technology issue? We've only gone with the data we've got readily. So we've not kind of done that full data discovery piece because the technology's not been there to do it, or because it's been an ignorant viewpoint? So
technology and data, as you know, as we'll know when we work in it, is only as good as how it's being programmed.
Yeah. So
who's programming it?
Good point.
So there's your first issue. And then your second issue is that, the segregation of data is a big issue. So we get it in the property industry all the time. So if you ask any agent, what's your typical customer, they will say 50-year-old white male, because they're the ones who own the properties on paper. The people that you're actually going after are the people that are looking after those properties, which are usually wives, daughters, sons. So a much younger demographic and you need different kind of marketing strategy to go for them. But you're getting that data because the data that you're pulling is, let's say, land registry data, for example, which is just a name on a document. And or if you track that back, the reason that it's in the men's name is because they typically earn more, and they typically earn more, and we could go round in circles forever. So that you look at that, then your data analysis is fundamentally flawed from the outset. So if we started to look at data, let's talk about women, like safety for women going home an evening on their own, for example. This is a big topic right now. The data of crimes against individuals has not been segregated when it comes to attacks on women or time zones or places or what they were doing at the time that they were attacked, as opposed to the way it is for men. So it's just an attack.
Right.
And the victim is this.
Right.
But actually, if you want to address the safety of women, you need to understand why is that woman waiting for a bus at 9:00 at night?
Yeah.
Is there a transport issue?
Yeah.
Are your bus routes not being run correctly? And if you take that data and look at it from the women's point of view, then would you come up with a different solution?
Yeah.
So that,
that is just a mindful.
My
mind's just gone off on a whole.
There's loads of books on it. So.
Oh, love it! Right, I know on my reading list will be next few years. So you mentioned then, and it's hard not to talk about the whole gender equality, inequality. We've had many a conversation about the journey we've gone on and the negativity we've perhaps experienced from the opposite sex. Talk to me about that, because, you work, although you're in technology, you work in property, and property traditionally has been quite male heavy, very much like tech in actual fact, anyway, and that for many different reasons. But you've struggled with certain attitudes of opposite genders.
Yes.
Talk me through that in the most recent sense, because I know you had some issues when you were sat on a board and you were going through a shareholder scenario, without naming names and all the rest of it. I think it's really important for you to highlight, and I think people would be very interested to listen to the negativity you faced trying to create a voice on a board as a lone female.
Yes. And I do not want to name anyone, and I know that if people...
This isn't about that.
Yeah, it's not. It becomes about attitude that are permitted, basically, that are acceptable, and what is or isn't acceptable. And so one of the first ever board meetings I went on as a 25 maybe, 25-year-old, and travelled to London to go on a board meeting. It was exciting, and I was going back on the train afterwards, and having been heavily involved in the business. And so when I started out as co-founder, I started at the bottom. I answered the phones. I found the suppliers and moved up to an operations role, and then became COO. And then we decided. And so it was very much about developing what are my skills and which skills best fit the role that this company needs. And that's how we developed my position. And my other co-founder was naturally just CEO. So great. But there was a couple of things, because it was his idea, and somebody needed to hold that role, I suppose. Okay. Don't hate me. I know he's going to be listening. And we were great. We got on really well, and we spent a lot of time together because we were building it together. And then when the shareholders were involved, when we started to build those shareholders, and we had to do the boards in a bit more of it was like, oh, we come from... And I know there's a whole podcast out there about being an executive versus being a board member and getting it done effectively. We were very executive, and we got things done quickly as a result. So, and it was hard when we got in front of the board. So being somebody who was hands-on in the day-to-day running of the business, who dealt with the clients, who understand the business model, who was the only qualified member of that team as well, from a lettings and property management and estate agency side, I went to the board meeting, and the first thing that I really struggled with was just sort of trying to get everyone back aligned to what it was that we were doing. There were so many voices, so many attitudes in the room, so many eager points to make about, we should go down this path, and we should go down this path. And it was like, well, okay, well, we're already on this path, so why don't we work to this path first? But there was very little taken from me on the day, and it was quite frustrating. Yeah, it was very frustrating to be sat there and thinking, okay, and I understand that we all have to hear ideas and then talk around those ideas, but there really did feel like there was just too many ideas, no clear path about what to go down, and nobody listening to the input from the people. And there wasn't just me there as well. There was a couple of other people that worked in the day-to-day of the business that were saying the same as me, and we just weren't being listened to. So from my point of view, that could have been because I was a young girl who doesn't know what they're talking about, who wasn't financially invested into the business the same way that some of these others were. But then I suppose there was another somebody else with me there who was also at my level, which they would consider quite junior from a board point of view, who wasn't listened to as well. Although I do sometimes think that his attitude was a little bit more willing to just sit quietly, you know, not raise his head and you know, stick his head up above the parapet.
Yeah.
And it those board meetings got worse for the next 3 or 4 years after that. They were just every single time. So yeah, that didn't become a fun part of being involved in business. But we went to the pub afterwards, and we were sat in a corner. Of course, I wasn't allowed to buy a drink, which was fine. You know, I was on train, so they'd go and buy the drink. And then I had somebody with me who was stood talking, and he leaned into me and he just said, "I'm going to stay here with you." And I was like, "Why?" And he just went, "I just don't want any inappropriate advances." And I was like,
"From who? General public or from the board?"
Other board members that were there. And no sooner had he said it that another board member came over and asked how my relationship was with my husband and whether I was staying over in London that evening. And it was like, no, I'm going back on my train and everything's fine. Like, it was just, yeah, this is very weird. So, and then as he sidled away, the apology that came from, but not from the person who just thought that was completely appropriate to indirectly offer to keep me company for the evening, because he was also down there, and take me for food and that sort of stuff. That, you know, it's just like, whoa. And then he was like, "I'm so sorry about that." And it's like, and then you go, well, was there some sort of, is he known to be like this, or was there some sort of discussion that went on? And then a few months later, we were at an awards ceremony, and we'd won an award, and there was all the CEOs, the men were sat around the table at the end, and everyone was having a drink. And the conversation turned to co-founders that were male and female.
Right.
And whether they can possibly be co-founders and just co-founders and not be in a relationship if they're male and female. And the general consensus around the table was there was no way that co-founders, male and female co-founders, can sustain a relationship just in a business sense. That one of them has to fancy the other one. And I was like,
oh, this is
madness
brilliant.
Is this?
This is
like,
gold.
yes, this was crazy.
Right.
There was a lawyer there who was saying this as well,
good.
which was quite funny. I was like, but you wouldn't say the same if it was 2 female co-founders or 2 male co-founders? And the answer was no. So I was like, oh, we're moving on to another level of discrimination here then, are we?
So there was a general point that if you were co-founders and you were opposite gender, that you had to fancy each other.
One of you definitely had to fancy the other, and that there was highly likely to be a situation in which you would step over the boundary of being co-founders into some form of physical relationship. And I was like, that's madness. Like, it's just complete madness. And so at the time...
What did they base this on, by the way?
Well, I just have to point out as well, this was 4 hours into an event, and I'd had a few to drink, and I'm sat there with my very nice ball gown on, with all these men on the table, feeling very, very, very intimidated.
Well, yeah, because
I was the subject of the conversation. And so I found it really hard to sort of change the conversation. They just wanted to carry on going. What they were asking is, are you sleeping with your co-founder? And they just couldn't ask that question. And why could they not ask that question? Because it's a completely inappropriate question to ask.
So they went with...
So we go and talk around the subject as general instead.
Statistics that say whatever.
It was awful. And again, I was still quite young. So,
but you fast forward though, and that was obviously, you know, you were younger and everything else. And I'm not suggesting that is an excuse at all. You went and joined a private club, right? Thinking that you can get, I mean, you can say about, I think, knowing what I did, you wanted to kind of network a bit more, right? With some people in influential people within Manchester. And you experienced quite a significant sexual discrimination there, didn't you? Please tell us about that.
So at the time, I was working with another networking group, which was purely about helping startups and early stage companies get to a point where they could invest. So I was working with a lot of investors. We were doing a lot of pitch training for people. And it was known that I was. And so I got to chatting, made loads of friends there, like loads of contacts. And it sort of became more peer related, a bit like me and you, really. It was just like the potential for business relationship probably wasn't there, but a long-term friendship, definitely. And I interacted with this gentleman, we'll call him, just because I'm nice. And he was always quite forward, and that's fine. And so that's sometimes just personality, isn't it? So, and then we were at the bar once, and he was talking to me about his pitch deck. And he was like, I need your help. Will you look at it? And I was like, yeah, of course. In fact, just introduced me to the investors. And I said, I don't do that. I don't introduce you to investors. I never do. I'll look at your pitch deck and give you some pointers. And then if you like, we can get you on some events. And then the investors will see you.
Right.
And that way, then I'm not.
You're not.
I'm not saying this is an investable business. I don't want to. And so I said, let me have a look at your pitch deck. And he'd had a couple to drink, and he just leaned into me and said, if you sleep with me, you can see my pitch deck. And then turned, and I was like,
wow, what an absolutely thrilling opportunity for you.
Bizarre, yeah. But there were a number of occasions on various events where he overstepped that mark, and it wasn't just with me, it was with other women.
Right.
And the certain members of the club.
Did you sleep with him to get his pitch deck though? Because I would have done.
No, I didn't. I had a number of apologies from him after that, because I think he realised that it was wrong. But you're just not having that conversation with other men. You're not having that conversation. You're not, even if you say it was a joke, and he never did. To be fair, he never said it was a joke and it went too far, because that would have been even more infuriating, because it clearly wasn't, because he's done it before with other people.
Has he ever been pulled up on it? No.
Well, the reason I'm no longer a member of that organisation is because he's still a member of that organisation.
Did you raise it with the organisation?
Yes.
And they've done nothing with it. And this is the problem we have. So recently I was sexually harassed at an event. It was an industry event, and somebody had just came over and just grabbed me, or everywhere, and done it previously 20 to 30 minutes before with another lady.
Wow.
And apparently with another one or two in that very large or very high senior position, very large organisation. And the organisers of the event said, but they're our biggest customer. So, and actually it wasn't that bad, I guess, in the whole scheme of things. So what's he going to do? He's going to lose his job, maybe get a divorce, or he's got 3 kids, and I'm like, and I care because... So this is the problem.
It's the outcomes, isn't it?
Right.
We're just thinking about the outcomes,
right,
not the event itself.
So what are we teaching the next generation?
Well, exactly, yeah.
It's okay.
This is.
There's always a reason.
You can apply this not just to sexual discrimination and sexual assault, which is what it is. This goes beyond that as well, to physical in against other men as well. So if somebody gets away with that because of their position, then
it's intimidation. Actually,
it is, and there's been a number of big names at big organisations that have been in the press that have also been accused of this kind of thing, which were raised early on in their careers, which could have been dealt with early on in their careers in a different way to stop it from happening. Yeah. And you are a victim at the end of the day if that happened. I was frustrated because had I just been in a pub and this not being the event that it was, I'd likely would have hit him or thrown a drink on him. And then I'd have been potentially in trouble, because the truth is that I don't like that kind of stuff. Yeah. So at the very least, I would have called it out. And at the time, I just said, that's completely inappropriate. And then turned around to the person that was stood next to me, who said, did he just say what I think he just said? And I said, he did, and I don't want to talk to him, so can I talk to you? Yeah. And they were like, yes, you can. And actually, they're the ones who raised it with the club, not me. Good. So they raised it with the club. And then the club came to me and said, well, did this happen? And I said, yes, it did happen. Yes. So, and then there was like I said, there was other suggestions. Yeah. But the point is it should have been made extremely clear that was not only a breach of the membership rules, but completely inappropriate, not just for other members, but to anybody. And it wasn't. And then your situation, the consequences of what happens after the event shouldn't be a consideration as to how you tackle what happened itself.
It's just, it needs to be nipped in the bud. I mean, all right, I'm drawing a line here and it's a sort of wavy one. Jimmy Savile got away with murder, literally, for years because it wasn't nipped in the bud. This is no different, but it's subtle and subliminal and it's constant. And unfortunately, unless we start saying
it's constant,
then we're going to be part of the problem. And I felt the trappings of, do I say anything or not say anything? I mean, emotionally, do I get involved or not get involved? And it should be up to other people as well to say, I'm going to help you out with this.
Well, you put yourself at risk, don't you? As soon as you say something. Absolutely. I mean, just having this conversation now on this podcast, when this goes out, I know there's a handful of people in my connections that will know what I'm talking about, and I know there'll be a number of others that will try and surmise what it is that we're talking about. And then it's like, well, do I become the talking point rather than that become the talking point?
And do you know what's really sad, Alex, is that, your journey, your career, your achievements, in some way, I mean, they've been you've constantly fought to gain, to grow. To people like you in the business world are brilliant, but your light could be extinguished by the nature of how you're treated.
Yes,
and that bothers me.
I could have walked away. Yeah, comfortably walked away a few times, and I did contemplate it a few times and think, I could just be a stay-at-home mum, and I know that not a lot of people have the ability to say that, but I genuinely could have been. My husband's quite successful. He's had a number of businesses and he was doing well, So there were a number of times where I was like, I'll just do that because it's just less hassle, and it's quite. You have to have a thick skin.
Yeah,
you have to have a thick skin, but you also need to recognize when it's not you that's the problem.
Yes.
So, and exactly. If you can do that, then maybe you can turn a blind eye. The other thing is cutting off those relationships. So if that's what it is, and if that's what that wants to associate itself with, then you don't want to be a part of it, regardless of the benefit that you might or might not have by being or not being a part of it. So if you can have that drive and carry on, then not everyone's like that. That's the other thing too. Not everyone is like that.
We're still fighting it. It's a war, and each battle is going to be hard and we'll have scars from it. And it sounds like we're over dramatizing it, but I didn't realize, and here's my ignorance, how much something like that would affect me until it happened to me. And it wasn't even the worst case of molestation or groping.
But there shouldn't be cases of molestation.
But this is the point. I was shocked at my reaction to how somebody had invaded my personal space, and it really, really messed with my head, and it knocked my confidence. And I suddenly thought, if I am going to put females in my business in a situation like that, how the hell am I going to respond? Where's my duty here? What do we need to do? And that's what worries me about the future, because whilst we try to encourage people to be coming into traditional male industries and to challenge themselves more and to be vulnerable, that vulnerability is not acceptable.
No, and definitely, and we're going to bring it back to tech here, and I'm maybe going to call out somebody who doesn't really want to be. It's going to be a bit of free PR, hopefully. But I, as a judge on a few technical awards, came across a company who was tackling this exact issue, that people don't feel brave enough to be able to say, he did that to me or she did that to me, and get away with it.
Right.
And so, because it's too public, because you are putting yourself out there.
So is this Gemma?
This is Gemma McCall.
So I put lunch for Gemma. Culture shift needs to be in every single event.
I love it.
I do. I do.
So I was reading through it and I was like, oh my God, I love this. And then I was on the judging panel going, but this is amazing, guys. Yeah. This is just technology for a useful thing. And it was really nice to come across that.
Well, I'm going to meet Gemma about this specific thing, because at every event there needs to be a whistleblowing scenario, and Culture Shift would absolutely be able to do that. And it is not free PR, it's the right PR, because this needs to be in every single...
It's that technology thing, isn't it? That's what we were talking about before, and making sure that it is a useful piece, and it's the problem solution. There is a problem, and somebody has come up with a solution utilising technology.
Exactly, and all power to it. And I have to say, we'll both back that. So watch this space. Let's get on our three-way podcast and see what we're doing. Yay, Gemma. So let's talk about you and your drivers for the future. You have achieved a shitload. That's a very technical term, by the way. Shitloads in your career thus far, and you're consistently breaking barriers and boundaries for yourself and others. I get that. But I really think you've got so much more to give, and I love Let's Move UK. I love what you're doing. But what's your drivers for the future? What is it that you're aiming to achieve? You say you've been working on this for the last 18 months. There's some really good stuff going on. Tell us a bit about that and what's your key drivers.
So we're fundraising at the moment. So we are raising for seed, and there'll probably be a follow-on because Let's Move is a solution, it's a tool, but there's the data side of it. And what I'd love to be able to do is like I said earlier, is take that data and give it to people that maybe don't understand the benefits that you can get from properly analysed data, and how that can improve their lives and what benefits they can get from it financially. So that's one angle, and it's not always going to be property based.
Yeah.
So there'll be other things, and what I'm hoping to do is partner with some really clever people that are already there to launch different products that will help the way we live in houses. So that's all in the very long roadmap over the next 5 or 6 years. And I'd love to promote women getting into this industry, women getting into anything. I mean, data is probably, a perfect entry point for the technical field. Yeah. And I know that a lot of women are put off by coders and stuff, so that'd be great. But overall, just to get to a point where I can spend my time doing good stuff, and I'd like to tackle the late school introduction to technology. So I'd like to change, maybe offer an extracurricular service somewhere, to build a centre in Manchester that allows schools to bring on X number of pupils that are interested in technology and business in technology to show them how to do it. So not just computer coding, which is what, GCSE technology is, and it puts them on, and then they don't go on to college, and if they do go on to college, the dropout rate from college is ridiculous. And so show them different ways. You can go into this career straight from school. At 16, GCSEs under your belt, you can come straight into a technical career, but maybe you don't understand where that can lead to. What's your career progression?
Or what the starting point is, because I think 60% plus roles in tech are non-tech.
Yeah.
So just because you enjoy it doesn't mean to say you have to be excellent at the coding side, at the technical end. Yeah. So, and again, it's that education and awareness. So I'm loving that you're going to do that.
My 10-year plan is to have that up and running and to get mentors on it.
Yeah.
But it can't just be me, obviously, but to maybe have intakes each year, so that it is like a coding camp. A business tech camp.
Yeah.
And how can we get girls to think about becoming CEOs? How can we get girls to think about becoming CTOs? Those angles. And then obviously have really successful business that's raised loads of money and is now performing brilliantly, and is everyone a household name would be great. Yeah.
Love it.
And who knows what else we'll do from a solution-led point of view. But I'd also like to work with startup businesses. And I do already work with a few startup and with the university as well, as part of the cohort stuff, to try and help people go down that route. But I think there's a lot of information out there, and it's difficult to sift through it when you're in the height of the angst and because you're a startup, and you are everything, and you are 12 hours a day.
Chief cook and bottle washer, exactly. And I think, to be honest, the hardest thing actually as you grow is to let some of that go, which you'll find as you,
well, we talked about recruitment, didn't we? And I was just like, I do really struggle with recruitment, and it's probably one of the things I need to work on the most is letting go. Yeah. And I'll hold my hands up and say, yes, I am a control freak, but I'm a control freak because I was made into a control freak because of the situations that I've faced. Yeah. And keeping control of stuff in my head is one of the only reasons that make your move, my online business, is a survivor.
Well, that's more quality control, right? Yes. So I think quality control is different to just control for the sake of control. And I think that that's okay. And then, of course, it is about handing the baton to someone else for that quality control so that you can help create the vision.
Step back as well. This was a high growth network thing was always about take the helicopter.
Take the helicopter view. We were like, I think we were like quite snappy then, weren't we, in those days?
And it is completely working on your business, not in your business.
Yeah, that's a big takeaway.
Well, it's a huge investor no, isn't it? So if you're like, if you answer the phones, if you push the orders, if you pay the suppliers, then, you know, who's actually working on the business? And so that when you do work out as a startup, what business roles you need to fill in quickly, you start by what am I doing on a day-to-day basis, and then you fill that. And when you fill those roles, then you can move into the other stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Exactly. Amazing. Right. Softer questions. Quick fire. 3 questions to end. Who inspires you?
So, this is such a tough question. I use quick fire questions. You inspired me.
Oh, God.
There was a lot. Yeah, Hayley. One of the greatest achievements out of my networking group was meeting you. I thought you were brilliant. So, yeah.
I've not even paid you. This is brilliant.
It will
free
come
coffee.
later.
I mean, it's nice. Very cheap.
Is great, by the way. Yeah. I suppose I am inspired by strong women that hold that are able to hold a genuine social appeal to other women. So in anything, not just technical in business. I like celebrities that are very forthright about women's rights and their role and promote not only their achievements within what they're doing, but also their achievements as a family as well. Yeah. So I like anybody that can do the balancing. So if we're Gemma Atkinson, for example, love following her on social media. I just love how strong she comes across, and I think if we all aspire to do a bit more of what she does, we'll all be better people anyway. Those sorts of things. But my biggest inspiration has always been my mum. So and sadly is not with us anymore. But she was the woman that drove me into everything, and I'm not going to get serious, especially not on the camera.
I love it.
She taught me everything I know about business to start with, anyway. I've moved on from that, and if she was here, and I know she'd be incredibly proud.
She would. So, she would, absolutely.
She was a strong women's rights advocate as well, but nobody would mess with her. She's the one who taught me to punch them if they do say something you don't like.
Kind of need her on a night out. Brilliant. Advice to younger self?
Don't take it all so personally. That's the big one, really. It's not about you, it's about them. You need to let go of those.
Easy said than done, isn't it?
It is massively, yeah.
I know. And finally, because you had such a wonderful experience and time spent in hospitality, what's your favourite pub snack?
Oh, pork scratchings. And I know everyone's going to. It's just
without the hairs on, though. I always get a bit.
Although it's moved on from that now. You don't really get them anymore. It's those. I like those jalapeno pretzels now.
Oh, I've not tried those.
Oh, every cocktail bar, every pub we go into.
Are they a bit kind of trendy?
They're like,
I need to get out more.
And the other thing about pub snacks, by the way, you can't just open the packet and have it. If you're with people, you need to tear it open on 3 corners and then open it up as a book, and then everyone can help themselves.
You heard it here first, guys. Share those pub snacks.
Yes.
Alex, you've been an absolute treasure, as I knew you would be, and what a fantastic life story, not only a career story, life story, and you are going to go on and do bigger, better, brilliant things, and I'm absolutely honoured that I'm going to be following you and being part of that as your mate.
Yes.
Something else. So thank you, Alex.
Thank you for having me.
Very welcome.